What does it mean to be in a positive or a negative space with your significant other?
So you have thoughts about your significant other, right? You have thoughts about me, right?
I do. Many.
Let me ask this question. Do you always think positive things about me?
Sorry to tell you. I got to be honest.
Okay.
No.
You don't always think positive
Everything
things
is
about
not
me.
always positive.
And that's kind of what it means to have negative and positive thoughts, to be in a negative place or a positive place about your significant other. So if you're dwelling on the negative things and you're thinking about the negative parts of the relationship, or if you're thinking about the positive parts, that's kind of like where you're building this house. You're spending this time in that area. And man, it has a big impact on the quality of your relationship. Because if I'm thinking negative things about you or positive things about you, that's going to change how I talk to you, whether or not I want to spend time with you, how I listen to you.
Do you think that you have very much control over whether or not you're in a positive or negative space with me?
Whenever I feel like something negative happens, or if I get hurt, or if I feel something negative, I feel like I don't have very much control over whether or not I get to the negative, but I do feel like I have control on whether or not I get back to the positive.
Okay. Yeah, I think
Does
that's
that
a
make
good
sense?
example. And I agree with that. Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes we get this automatic shift into this negative space.
You get slammed into something
You
negative.
have something happen.
Yeah.
But we can get back to this positive space. We can make a manual switch.
What about you? The question that you just asked me, do you think you have very much control over whether or not you get put?
I tend to think that we do, but I agree with you that
Okay.
a lot of times it is our response. Like just a few minutes ago, between videos, we're like, our kids, be quiet, we're trying to film, all these different things. And it could be easy to feel like we can't do this because we're now in a negative space. But we try to just have the lower expectations for our kids. We have a high expectation for them, like be quiet while we're filming. We're trying to help, all these things. But then we also can try to bounce back from it, to not expect them to be perfect, but then we can kind of shift. So in a significant other relationship, if our expectations are so high that we can't handle them being late by 5 minutes or forgetting anything or missing the laundry or doing these things, then we just are so angry at them, then that might mean we're typically in a negative space.
Something that you just said made me think about when you have a low frustration tolerance level. That's usually an indication that you're not current. And we talk about being current. Current means that there's not something between us that we haven't talked about. It doesn't mean everything's perfect, but it means I'm not holding back frustrations I'm not communicating about, and you're not either. It's like we're on the same page.
Yeah, we can run through an example of that. Let's say that there's dishes in the sink, and I asked Chuck, hey, will you be able to do the dishes today? Because I'll have this late meeting or something.
Sure.
And then I come in and the dishes aren't done, and I'm angry at him, but I'm not just like a little bit angry. I am like rolling off all the things that he didn't do and all these things.
You're making a list of other things than just the dishes.
I might have a low frustration tolerance. It could be because of work. I could be displacing some of my frustration on him.
Yeah, that happens.
And that might be some things about me. Like I need to have a little bit more just space in my life where I can't. Margin was the word I was trying to find.
You're maxed out.
Yeah, I just need to have a little bit more margin so I'm not pushed to the max. But then I also need to make sure I'm not storing up all these other things I'm mad about. Like, I don't think you're really mad about the dishes. I think you're mad about, last week and the week before that and all of these other things that maybe we haven't talked about or maybe we didn't resolve, all of those different things.
So dealing with the things, even if they might seem small, if you're carrying them and you're building a list of things that you're frustrated about, then you're starting to look for things that confirm this list that you're building. For sure,
yeah. And I think that that's something that happens when people get divorced a lot of times. They've gone to their friends and they've talked about the list. Oh, he doesn't do this, he doesn't do this. And even I've heard people say this, like, oh, I wish my husband was like your husband. He's so great. He does the dishes. He does the work. He's a godly man, does all these things. I wish my husband were like that. And that can still, even though that can be sounding like a compliment, it can be from that person being in a negative space. They feel like my husband's not. And sometimes if we continue to allow ourselves to just think all those negative things, then we're creating distance in the relationship.
You're listening to that soundtrack. You're playing that movie over and over again in your mind that your husband or your wife, whatever it might be, isn't this.
Yeah.
And whenever you get home at the end of the day, what do you think you're looking for? you feel like your husband or your wife is not what you want them to be,
Yeah.
man, that's hard.
We're going to confirm the bias we've already been telling ourselves. Confirmation bias.
Correct.
It's another social psych term.
So we want to help people to recognize when they're in a negative space and understand that there's something that you can do to get into more of a positive space.
Yeah.
Communicating about your expectations, dealing with things as they come. And it can be a little bit daunting because often with our most important relationships, it can feel the most difficult to work on them.
For sure. But we can get back to a positive space. We've done it hundreds of times in our relationship. And even if you didn't know this term,
You have to.
Yeah, we call it switch theory. We switch from this positive to this negative space and back to the positive space.
Yep.
We can kind of go back and forth. But yeah, you've done this. You want to get back to a positive space. We spend time mulling it over. Am I going to say something? Am I not going to say something? Do I need to say something? No, I don't need to say something. But it's all, we want to get back to this positive space. And it's worth it. It's important. And we can do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we'd love to get into this even more with you. You can check it out at elliotlifecoaching.com and see why people leave. That's the course. There's 8 sessions of videos and a guide that goes along with it. And switch theory is unpacked in that. And you can see how for significant relationships, significant others, your work, friendships, family members, all kinds of things that it can apply to.